some of the context menus, I'm adding some additional features related specifically to Unity events that I wanted to cover. And I think they'll be very helpful for a lot of people when it comes to copying components or converting their components to multiplayer. So what I did is I took a basic shooter melee character that has not been converted yet as a base. This is something that you could see from converting an Invector character or setting up an Invector character from scratch using these Invector menus here. So let's show how we can take advantage of some of the context menus that are available in the EMI package. So I first copied this over so we can kind of see the difference here. And if we look up, for example, this generic action, it's targeting this one, and this one is targeting this one. When you do a basic copy like that, it'll copy over just fine. But let's go ahead and say, for whatever reason, when this Unity event was set up, it's targeting the wrong character here. And we'll say on this character, we're going to call this function. So as you can see, as I'm highlighting, this is the character I'm on, but it's highlighting this other character. It's an incorrect target. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to go up to the EMI menu, and I'm just going to go to Unity events, and then I'm going to say retarget events to this. So I'll go ahead and click that, and you'll see it has now, it keeps the same event, but it retargets it to the correct object. And in other scenarios, if you're copying certain events, there might be situations where it's blank, essentially. So I'm going to put a random one in here. So we have a blank Unity event. Now it's not going to break anything, but it's also not great, to have missing events sitting in your Unity object. So we can also come up to here, go to EMI, Unity events, and we can remove empty target events. So you'll see it kept the same thing, but it removed that empty target. The last thing here is to have a duplicate event. So let's do that. So v animator receiver name, we're going to copy that exact same thing here, and then we're going to say EMI Unity events remove duplicate events, and you'll see that it removed that duplicate event here. So those are kind of the individual actions. I separate them out because there may be small edge case scenarios when you may want to do that. But for the most part, I would say you're not going to actually be taking advantage of those. But what you're really going to want to do is be copying all the events from one target component or an object to another. So let's have a look at that. So this time, let's say I converted this to the multiplayer version of this component. And I'm going to go ahead and say remove component from here. And when I first set it up, you'll see I don't have any of the events here. And so if I was just to try and copy this directly over, it would try to reference, if we look at this one, you'll see it's trying to reference a non-multiplayer version. So let's go ahead and do that first of all. Let's set it up. So I can say copy, deep copy values, and deep paste values. So it's referencing the correct object here. It's the non-multiplayer version. And it also copied over all of these settings here that were on the original component. But let's say I don't have this exact name component. I don't have V Shooter Manager. I actually have the multiplayer version. So let's say multiplayer V Shooter Manager. And then let's find the other shooter manager here. Let's say remove component. You'll see that we get that missing value here. We'll say remove empty target events if there's a ton of that happening. But now we kind of have this weird problem, right? Where this component actually doesn't exist, right? It's the multiplayer version of the component here. So luckily I've worked around that problem for you. So now we can do this exact same thing. We're going to copy the values, and then we are going to paste the values, but you'll see it actually found the multiplayer version and it targeted on the correct object here. So this means it'll actually, when you're copying components over, it'll actually find the correct component for you and put that Unity event in for you. And you'll see that what's actually really interesting about this is if we go to the vShooter Manager cancel reload, so the vShooter Manager cancel reload, and in fact, let's get one that has a dynamic component, because this actually does support dynamic components. So we need a vTrigger action component. Here we go. So this one right here, this dynamic trigger action component is what we're going to want. So let's say that that component is already there. So let's go to vTrigger action component here. So we're going to actually take this and we're going to copy it over here. Now, if I was to copy and paste, it would actually duplicate this event. But let's see what happens. So let's paste those values. It'll actually look like nothing happened here because actually what happened is it added it. It ran through remove empty events. It retargeted it. And then it said, hey, let's remove duplicate events. And then you'll see, hey, there's actually 2 of these events. So it removed the duplicate one. So if I do this multiple times here, you'll see it takes those duplicate events down to a single event. So there we go. So that's nice if you want to copy over like one object. But if I have, this is a multiplayer version, this is multiplayer, this is multiplayer, this is multiplayer. If I have to do that one at a time, it can be very tedious. And if I have to do that for my entire hierarchy here, that could take a really long time. So I've actually included something for you as well, which let's say I have already run through the menu here. So I've run through this, I've dragged them in there, created a multiplayer version, but I've changed something on this original object in terms of its events, and I want to copy this all of the events in every single component, make sure that both of these are completely in sync, so that they all have the same type of Unity events on them. So what I can do is go to any component, go to EMI, Unity events, and you'll see that in here there's a copy here, and there's a deep copy all hierarchy. So if I click this, what this is going to do is it's going to find every single component on this object, and then if I come to this object right here, and then go to EMI, Unity events, paste all hierarchy, you'll see that, and I'm going to actually remove this from the final release when I do this. I have this for some just debugging purposes, but it's also nice to see all of the components that it found. So here's all of the components that it found on this object, and it said, do these components have Unity events on them? If they do, it actually found this component, copied all of its Unity events over to the target component, retargeted them, switched them to multiplayer versions, removed empty targets, did all those nice things I just showed for you, but for every single component in the hierarchy. So that means you don't have to. And so now you know that this object and this object have the exact same Unity events. Even if this one is running the multiplayer versions, it's targeted it correctly for you. So hopefully that helps you. And one thing that is going to be very nice for you is I do this automatically for you if you use this convert objects menu. So if I do this right here, and because of that, the convert objects menu is now going to run maybe a little bit slower. Instead of finishing in like let's say 0.2 seconds, it may take a second now because it's going to scan your entire hierarchy for the object. So if I click convert object, that's how fast it took. And so now we have this cloned object. You'll see we have our generic action here. If we go to events, we see that our multiplayer events are here. And I don't know if there's any other events over here. Yeah, there's multiplayer versions here. So you see it now copies over everything properly for you, and you don't have to worry about these pesky events constantly failing or not properly converting over like it was in previous versions. And like I said, this will be available in version 0.4.4.